Supergiant's Pyre is extremely high fantasy. If the genre is defined by its multiple protagonists with varyingly mysterious origins, its emphasis on alternative worlds, and malevolent forces that take incorporeal forms, then Pyre is high fantasy to the nth degree. But it's also kind of a sports game, but it's also mainly a road trip saga. It's a lot of things, one of which is also really great. Like Transistor and Bastion before it, Pyre shares a lot of the Supergiant game's DNA. First of all, it's played from a top-down perspective, which gives you the experience of an omniscient higher power. This angle allows you to admire the gorgeous visuals that cover their subjects in this nebulous, colourful aura. The colour style lends itself to the fluidity of the character animations, which, like the two games previous, are fantastic. Supergiant really know how much personality can be communicated through movement, and with a cast as large as Pyre's, personality is critical. Pyre's story takes you on a whirlwind trip around the vibrant wasteland of the Downside. Exiled from high civilization known as the Commonwealth, you play the Reader, an anonymous being that possesses the rare ability of literacy. The Commonwealth has banned all forms of literature for its potential to educate its citizens and subsequently provoke dissidence or rebellion. The Downside is populated by those that have committed crimes in the Commonwealth. The only way to escape the Downside and take an exalted position back in the Commonwealth is to conduct the Liberation Rites, which are penance ceremonies that pay tribute to the 8 scribes and give exiles the chance to win back their freedom. Throughout the game you'll join a band of rogues, all from different backgrounds and of special forms. You start off by joining the likes of Jordariel the Demon and Disgraced Captain, as well as Hedwyn the Nobleman, who was exiled for desertion, and Ruki, the canine-like cur, who was sent to the Purgatorial Wasteland for smuggling. You need a team of 3 to conduct the rites, which in practice play out like a netball-style match. The goal is to douse your opponent's pyre by slamming the singular orb into it. Each character has unique abilities and stats that help banish the enemy triumvirates, zoom past their defences, or keep possession of the orb. Where Pyre really shines though, and I'm slowly getting to my point now, is its visual novel style narrative. As the reader, you have no established identity. You're defined by your relationships with the 8 or so total members of the Nightwing Triumvirate. Your decisions affect the interconnected dynamic of your team. For example, agreeing to accept Tamitha into the fold will deter Jordariel due to the historical conflict between the Commonwealth military and the Harps. The two will refuse to be part of the same triumvirate unless you intervene. As I played and witnessed these interactions, as bonds between characters fractured and mended, the Nightwings continued to move from right to right, encountering the same characters and locations over and over again. This perpetual movement is mesmerising, and I couldn't help but draw comparisons to a particular type of fiction. Road fiction specifically, or as most refer to it, road trip fiction. The obvious place to start is to say that Pyre embodies a road trip in that it sees you literally traversing the Downside in your compact but cosy black wagon. You visit a variety of celestial landmarks, meeting a whole host of weird characters on your way that have their own roots and motivations. Pyre pits you against the other 10 triumvirates, racing to complete the Rites of Flame in order for a chance at the Liberation Rite and to send one of your triumvirate back to the Commonwealth. As the journey progresses, your relationships with both friend and foe develop. I found myself throwing certain rites or matches so that foes I believed deserved exaltation more than my triumvirate would have the chance at freedom. This is a key tenet of road fiction. Despite the monotony of the journey, slowly the perspective of the protagonist, or player in this case, alters from the presumptions they're anchored to. The road will do that to you, it's transformative that way. And that's just looking at the core narrative style. Pyre's aesthetic represents classic road fiction more than most. We think of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, or Easy Rider, or even more recently Mad Max and Logan as the standard of road fiction. These emphasise the dusty trail and hard-knocked protagonists that have seen too much. However, Homer's Odyssey is really where road fiction's roots are planted, and where Pyre takes a lot more influence. As a quick aside, Matt Fraction and Christian Ward create a comic called Odyssey, which is a gender-broken science fiction retelling of the original Homer text. It's fantastic and gory and dense, but aesthetically resembles quite a lot of Pyre with that vibrant colour style. This is all to say that Pyre digs into the epic journey element of road fiction more than taking influence from the grizzled, self-punishing examples. Pyre's lore is thick and thorough, and though it's given to you in digestible chunks, it can be as daunting as trying to get through Homer's Odyssey on a bank holiday weekend. That said, the clever writing and great characters give you pretty much everything you need to know about the history of the downside to make informed, satisfying decisions in the liberation rites. Road fiction typically falls into the category of Bildungsroman, a literary genre that focuses on the psychological and moral growth of the protagonist. My first annotation is that term extends way beyond road fiction and covers everything that remotely resembles a coming-of-age story. I'm also going to throw the word literary in the bin because I would argue that the medium of the story isn't relevant to the content's genre. What I'm more intrigued about is the idea of moral growth. As you defeat other triumvirates in the Rites of Flame, their perspectives change. Some may become more determined to take their rightful place in the Commonwealth, others lose hope entirely. Each character, regardless of their role relative to you, have a history with the downside. Moral growth has already occurred previous to you playing Pyre, or at least coming into contact with these characters. This is the brilliance of the writing. Your actions and choices are only a small part of the Pyre lore and the journey these characters take. As such, it impresses a significance to your role that if you make quote-unquote right decisions, this landscape changes for an individual, but not for the wider world. Individualism is the lifeblood of road fiction, or at least a starting point. And that's just one reading of this moral growth concept. You'll have to play the game for yourself to get the breadth of this point, but the reader, or the player, experiences moral growth as the liberation rites approach. There were multiple times where I was dead set on liberating one member of the Nightwings, only for one character to share a particularly touching story on the path up to the fall of Solium, where the rites are conducted. This forced me to reconcile everything I'd experienced in the journey so far, and solve a moral quandary between losing a valued member of my team and giving them the opportunity to claim their rightful freedom. Pyre hits all these touchstones of great road fiction. It's as perspective changing and dynamic as the landmarks you cross in your journey. Even as you revisit them, they've changed because you have. The crucial takeaway from road fiction is that what happens on the road never stays on the road. And Pyre, with its ability to cultivate moral growth in its players, embodies this wholly.